May 21st is not an ordinary day. This is not one of those passing astrological moments that drifts by unnoticed while life continues exactly as it was. This is the kind of alignment that changes the meaning of a conversation you already had. Kind that makes one sentence suddenly sound different in your memory. The kind that forces your mind to connect dots you were emotionally avoiding. Because on May 20th, Mercury forms a powerful trine with Pluto. And when the planet of thought, communication, memory, decisions, and messages aligns with the planet of truth, secrecy, power, obsession, and transformation, something buried begins to move quietly at first, then unmistakably. If you have been feeling like something is off but cannot explain why, if someone's words have not matched their energy, if your intuition has been whispering while your logic kept trying to, stay calm. This message is for you because Mercury does not shout. Mercury notices. Mercury collects details. Mercury remembers tone. Mercury replays conversations. Mercury sees patterns in language, timing, silence, and reaction. Pluto does something very different. Pluto does not care about appearances. Pluto strips away what is false. Pluto governs the hidden chamber beneath the visible room. The fear behind the smile, the motive behind the promise, the emotional power struggle behind the polite conversation. And when Mercury and Pluto work together in harmony as they do, in this trine, surface-level reality becomes impossible to trust without deeper examination. This is not chaos. This is revelation. Not the kind that crashes through your life with destruction, but the kind that arrives through one realization so sharp, it changes everything you thought you'd understood. Imagine standing in a dimly lit archive, surrounded by shelves of old sealed files. For months, maybe years, you walk past one locked drawer without opening it. Not because you could not, because something inside you knew that once you opened it, the story would change. That is the energy of this transit. Mercury is the key in your hand. Pluto is the locked drawer. And what lies inside may not be a dramatic external secret. It may be an internal truth you have been avoiding because accepting it would require action. That relationship you kept explaining away, that financial pattern you blamed on bad timing, that repeating emotional ache you kept spiritualizing instead of confronting. This transit does not create the truth. It reveals what was already waiting, and that is why this energy can feel unsettling before it feels empowering. Because deep truth rarely arrives with comfort first. It often arrives with discomfort, memory, strange emotional friction, or an unshakable sense that something is trying to get your attention. Some of you have been in emotional limbo. Conversations that never became clear. Messages that left more questions than answers. A silence that somehow said too much. A situation where you keep telling yourself to relax, yet your body refuses. To settle, that is not always paranoia. Sometimes that is the nervous system recognizing inconsistency before the conscious mind admits it. Mercury rules the mental field. Your thoughts, conversations, emails, texts, calls, information flow, contracts, decisions, interpretation, perception. It governs the part of you that tries to understand what is happening through observation and language. It is the translator between inner awareness and outer reality. And when Mercury becomes highly activated, your mind becomes fast, alert, sensitive to nuance. You hear what was not said. You notice pauses. You remember exact wording. A delayed reply suddenly means something. A phrase repeats in your mind because some part of you knows it matters, but Mercury alone can become noise, overthinking, analysis paralysis, endless interpretation without conclusion. Pluto changes that. Pluto takes scattered information and pulls it downward into emotional truth. Pluto asks a much more dangerous question. What is really happening beneath this? Pluto rules hidden motives, shadow behavior, control dynamics, deep emotional memory, psychological patterns, endings, rebirth, obsession, and truth that survives pressure. Pluto does not care whether the truth is comfortable. Pluto cares whether it is real. This is why Mercury trine Pluto can feel like mental fog suddenly becoming precision. You may find yourself remembering something from weeks ago with completely different understanding. A sentence someone said casually may suddenly expose their actual intention. A financial detail you ignored may suddenly look important. A repeating emotional trigger may reveal the deeper wound underneath it. This is the kind of transit where hidden logic becomes visible. Not because magic dropped information from the sky, but because your perception becomes sharp enough to process what was already there. And this matters, because many people watching this have been emotionally exhausted, not from dramatic events, but from uncertainty. Uncertainty is one of the heaviest emotional burdens a human being can carry. Not heartbreak itself, but the maybe. Not rejection itself, but the confusion. Not the ending, but the unfinished sentence. Human mind can survive pain faster than it can survive ambiguity. Ambiguity keeps the nervous system suspended, keeps the heart negotiating with possibilities. It keeps your intuition trying to warn you while your hope keeps rewriting the story. That is what makes this transit powerful. It does not always bring external news. Sometimes it brings internal certainty, and certainty changes behavior faster than information ever could. Some of you have spent months explaining away emotional inconsistency because you wanted peace. Some of you ignored small financial red flags because confrontation felt inconvenient. Some of you stayed spiritually attached to an idea because letting go would feel like failure. Some of you knew exactly what the truth was, but lacked emotional readiness to say it aloud. Mercury trine Pluto is not interested in punishing you for that. It is interested in making avoidance harder, and that may begin subtly. A conversation feels different. A message arrives with strange timing. A dream repeats. An old memory resurfaces. Someone suddenly becomes more direct than usual. Or maybe no one says anything at all, and the silence itself becomes impossible to misunderstand. Because truth does not always enter through words. Sometimes truth enters through pattern recognition. A trine is important here because this is not a violent astrological clash. This is not Mercury under attack. This is flow, alignment, cooperation. That means the truth may emerge naturally rather than explosively. A conversation may become unexpectedly honest. Research may suddenly uncover what was hidden. Your intuition may finally align with logic instead of fighting it. Emotional clarity may arrive without external drama. This is why this energy can be so psychologically intense, because many people prepare for disaster, but very few prepare for clarity. Clarity can be disruptive, because once you truly understand something, you lose the ability to pretend you do not. And that is where the emotional transformation begins. You may already be feeling the buildup, restlessness, strange mental intensity, difficulty letting certain thoughts go, increased dream activity, a sense that something important is forming just outside conscious reach, throat tension, mental replaying, emotional fatigue without obvious explanation. The body often registers psychic contradiction before language catches up. Mercury lives in the nervous system. Pluto lives in the emotional underworld. When these energies synchronize, the body becomes part of the message. That heaviness in your chest may not be fear. It may be suppressed, knowing that agitation may not be anxiety. It may be internal truth asking for acknowledgement. That exhaustion may not mean weakness. It may mean you are carrying unresolved mental-emotional contradiction. This is why emotional honesty during this transit becomes medicine, not performative honesty, not impulsive confession. It's real honesty, the kind where you sit quietly and ask yourself a dangerous question. What have I already noticed that I keep pretending not to understand? That question alone can change the entire transit, because Mercury wants language, Pluto wants truth. Together, they expose self-deception just as clearly as deception from others. And that is where this becomes deeply personal, because it is easy to want hidden truth about someone else. It is harder to receive hidden truth about yourself, maybe. The truth is that someone's mixed signals were never actually mixed. Maybe. The truth is that your fear translated consistency as boredom and chaos as chemistry. Maybe the truth is that you already know. The relationship dynamic is power-based, not love-based. Maybe the truth is that you have outgrown a version of yourself, but keep returning because the familiar feels emotionally safer than the unknown. Maybe the truth is financial. Maybe you keep leaking energy, money, or time into systems that do not respect your future. Maybe you keep waiting for certainty before making a decision. When certainty only comes after action, Pluto is not interested in cosmetic healing. Pluto wants root cause. Mercury gives language to root cause. And when that happens, transformation becomes possible. But let us talk about what many people secretly want to know: love. Because this transit can absolutely move through relationships in powerful ways. Not because astrology is forcing someone to text you. Not because Every silence becomes destiny. But because communication and truth are becoming impossible to separate, if someone has been emotionally unclear, this energy makes clarity more likely. If someone has been hiding feelings, emotional pressure may rise. If someone has been controlling through ambiguity, their pattern becomes easier to detect. If you have been ignoring your own emotional standards to maintain connection, your tolerance may collapse. This is not necessarily reunion energy. It is truth energy, and truth is not always romantic. Sometimes the most loving revelation is realizing what must end. Sometimes the most painful relationships are not the ones built on cruelty. They are the ones built on uncertainty. The ones where nothing is clearly wrong, yet nothing ever becomes emotionally safe. The ones where affection appears in fragments, communication arrives in waves. Your nervous system becomes addicted to decoding behavior instead of receiving consistency. Mercury trine Pluto shines an uncompromising light into those dynamics. Not to shame you, not to punish you for hoping, but to show you where your emotional intelligence has been working overtime to compensate for someone else's emotional ambiguity. If someone has been speaking in half-truths, this transit makes the missing half louder. If someone says all the right words but their actions have carried another message, Mercury will remember, and Pluto will interpret. If someone disappears, when emotional depth becomes necessary, or becomes affectionate only when they sense distance, or creates closeness while avoiding accountability, this is the kind of energy that makes those patterns suddenly impossible to ignore. And if that realization hurts, it is not because truth is cruel. It is because truth removes fantasy, and fantasy often gave temporary comfort. But this transit does not only expose others, it exposes your emotional participation in the story. That is the deeper work, because Pluto is not interested in victim narratives if deeper self-awareness is available. Did you ignore what was obvious because loneliness felt heavier than uncertainty? Did you call intuition anxiety because accepting the message would require a boundary? Did you keep interpreting breadcrumbs as emotional investment because hope felt spiritually noble? These are not accusations. These are doorways. Pluto transforms when honesty enters the room. For some viewers, this transit may bring the conversation you have been waiting for. A person who has avoided emotional clarity may finally say something direct. A silence may break. A confession may emerge. An uncomfortable truth may surface in language that cannot be misunderstood. But even then, the message of this transit is not to become emotionally intoxicated by words alone. Mercury rules words. Words can be brilliant. Words can be persuasive. Words can be sincere. Words can also be strategic. Pluto asks a deeper question. What is the power dynamic behind the language? Is this communication creating clarity or trying to regain control? That question matters more than people realize. Because some truths heal, others manipulate. Some confessions create intimacy, others appear only when someone senses they are losing access. This is why emotional maturity during this transit matters so much. Truth is powerful, but timing is also power. Not every revelation requires immediate reaction. Not every emotional disclosure deserves instant trust. Sometimes the wisest response to new information is stillness, observation, letting the emotional smoke clear before making irreversible choices. And for those in stable relationships, this transit can be deeply healing. Honest conversations become easier. Hidden resentment can be named before becoming poison. Deep emotional fears can surface without immediate defensiveness. Vulnerability becomes less threatening. If both people are emotionally mature, Mercury trine Pluto can create extraordinary intimacy because it encourages truth without chaos, supports conversations that would normally feel too heavy, creates language for emotional complexity. Now let us move into money, because Pluto always has something to say about power. Money is one of the most emotionally charged forms of power humans navigate. This is not reckless abundance. It's energy. This is investigative wealth energy. This is contract treating energy. This is strategic thinking energy. This is the kind of transit where what is hidden in the details matters more than what is advertised in the headline. If you are negotiating, it's planning, investing, launching, researching, hiring, applying, or reviewing financial agreements, Mercury trine Pluto can be extremely useful because the mind becomes more penetrating. Surface promises become easier to question. Manipulative language becomes easier to detect. Power structures inside workplaces become more visible. Office politics may reveal themselves through subtle conversation. Hidden expectations become clearer. If something sounds too smooth, read again. If someone pressures urgency, pause. If the emotional tone around money feels controlling, notice it. Because Pluto governs leverage, Mercury governs agreements. And when these planets cooperate, intelligent caution becomes a superpower. This is an exceptional transit for researchers, investigators, strategists, analysts, therapists, writers, negotiators, entrepreneurs, and anyone who earns through information, communication, insight, or interpretation, if your work requires. Pattern recognition, reading between the lines, understanding motivation, solving hidden problems. This energy can feel mentally electrifying. But there is a shadow side. Obsessive thinking, financial paranoia, compulsive, checking hyper-analysis, trying to control uncertainty through information overload. That is Pluto. It's misused because deep perception is not the same as anxious fixation. Do not sign blindly, but do not spiral either. There is a difference between discernment and obsession. This same warning applies spiritually, because yes, transit can absolutely intensify symbolic awareness. Dreams may feel unusually vivid. A phrase may repeat in your mind. You may suddenly remember something from years ago with emotional clarity you did not have before. A gut feeling may become undeniable. Repeating patterns may catch your attention. A certain number sequence may seem to appear more frequently. A symbolic image may linger in consciousness. A sentence someone says casually may echo for hours, but balance matters here. Not every sign is supernatural. Sometimes intuition is simply your mind finally seeing the truth. That distinction is spiritually important, because genuine intuition creates grounded clarity. Fear-based projection creates obsession. Mercury trine Pluto strengthens both perception and interpretation, which means your responsibility is to remain emotionally honest about what you actually know versus what you are imagining. This is why journaling during this transit can be unusually powerful, not vague. Manifestation, Journal. NG truth, Journalining. Write what happened, write what was said, write what you felt, write what your body noticed, write the exact facts before emotional. Storytelling distorts them. Mercury loves language. Pluto loves excavation. Together, journaling becomes psychological archaeology. And now, let us talk about the body, because spiritual people often forget. The nervous system is not separate from emotional truth. You may notice mental overstimulation, trouble sleeping, jaw tension, throat, tightness, restlessness, digestive sensitivity, sudden fatigue after emotionally revealing conversations, strange sense of internal buzzing, emotional heaviness in the chest, the urge to isolate and think, or the opposite, the urge to compulsively communicate. Mercury governs mental activity and communication pathways. Pluto intensifies emotional depth. Together, the body can temporarily feel like it is processing hidden pressure. Hydration matters. Sleep matters. Quiet matters. Not because you are fragile, because clarity requires nervous system capacity. An overstimulated mind distorts truth. An exhausted body interprets fear as fact. If you feel emotionally activated, do not immediately send the message. Do not force the confession. Do not interrogate someone because your intuition is uncomfortable. Pause, breathe, observe. Truth that is real survives stillness. Truth depends on emotional force, often collapses under it. And this brings us to one of the most important warnings of this entire transit. Do not weaponize truth. This is where Pluto can become destructive. Using information to control, pushing someone into confession, stalking digital behavior, obsessively analyzing online activity, creating emotional traps, testing people, instead of communicating honestly, sending explosive messages designed to provoke reaction, trying to expose instead of understand. This transit can make people psychologically sharp. Sharpness without wisdom becomes manipulation. If truth gives you power, use that power with integrity, because karmically, intention matters. Now let us talk about what many of you may already be experiencing emotionally before this transit fully peaks. The strange emotional exhaustion that comes from carrying unanswered questions. The quiet grief of sensing distance before proof exists. The fatigue of explaining someone else's inconsistency to yourself. The frustration of feeling spiritually aware but emotionally uncertain. The ache of almost knowing. That state is profoundly draining. because the psyche burns enormous energy trying to reconcile contradiction. Mercury trine. Pluto resolves contradiction, sometimes gently, sometimes with brutal clarity, but resolution is coming. And that brings us to the signs most deeply impacted by this cosmic turning point. Because while everyone may feel this transit, some signs will feel it like a personal summons. The first is Gemini. Gemini. This transit speaks directly into your mind, your voice, your communication patterns, and the stories you tell yourself. Mercury is your ruler, which means this is not background energy for you. This is intimate. Your mental world becomes louder, sharper, more revealing. Conversations matter. Details matter. What people say and what they avoid saying matters. But the deepest message for you is not. It's about others. It is about your own internal truth. Have you been talking yourself in circles to avoid a decision? Have you been rationalizing emotional confusion because committing to truth would eliminate comforting possibilities? Have you been collecting information without acting on what you already know? This transit pushes you toward mental honesty, and with that honesty comes power. But only if you stop confusing endless thought with real clarity. Gemini, your breakthrough is not more analysis. It is the courage to trust the conclusion already forming. Aquarius, this energy reaches deeper than surface conversation. Pluto is now moving through your sign, which means your identity itself is being restructured in ways that are subtle, relentless, and impossible to fake. This is not simply about what someone says to you. This is about who you are becoming when truth removes the old performance. For a long time, many Aquarians have been living in a strange emotional contradiction. Outwardly composed, intellectually capable, emotionally detached enough to appear unaffected. Yet internally, something has been shifting. Old beliefs about power, relationships, independence, vulnerability, and self-protection have been quietly dissolving. Mercury trine Pluto turns the volume up on that process. A conversation may hit differently. A truth about someone close to you may expose what you have tolerated. A realization about your future may become impossible to postpone. A hidden emotional truth about your own desires may finally become undeniable. And because Aquarius often processes emotion through thought before feeling, this transit may first arrive as relentless mental clarity before the emotional impact fully lands. You may suddenly see the architecture of a relationship, the pattern of a friendship, the real power structure at work, the emotional cost of pretending something does not matter, and when Aquarius sees clearly, change becomes inevitable. But here is the deeper warning for you. Do not use detachment as emotional superiority. Pluto does not reward emotional avoidance disguised as intelligence. If your truth is grief, feel grief. If your truth is longing, admit longing. If your truth is disappointment, name disappointment. Transformation begins where performance ends, and for many Aquarians, May 20th becomes exactly that threshold. Now let us speak to Scorpio. Scorpio, if anyone understands Pluto, it is you. Even when Pluto is not your modern ruling conversation in every astrological framework. Your emotional DNA understands depth, secrecy, power, intensity, emotional truth, and psychological transformation. So when Mercury aligns harmoniously with Pluto, your intuition can become almost frighteningly accurate. But accuracy is not the same as permission. This matters because Scorpio energy can sometimes interpret insight as justification for emotional control. Mercury trine Pluto may reveal truth to you quickly. You may sense deception instantly. You may recognize emotional inconsistency before others do. You may see what someone is trying not to say, but wisdom is not forcing revelation before its natural time. Scorpio, this transit is asking for disciplined, emotional power, not interrogation, not obsession, not emotional surveillance, not testing loyalty through silence. True. Power does not need theatrical proof. For some Scorpios, the hidden truth being revealed is not about another person. It is about an emotional pattern you inherited, a wound you normalized, a relationship dynamic you unconsciously recreated, a scarcity belief driving your decisions, an old emotional script quietly directing your choices. That kind of revelation changes lives. And because Scorpio does not transform halfway, what you see now may initiate a much bigger emotional rebirth than you expected. Now, let us speak briefly to Virgo. Because Mercury rules you too, and while Gemini receives the mental spotlight, Virgo receives the structural consequence. Virgo. This is not random anxiety. This is pattern recognition trying to become clarity. You often notice what others miss, but your challenge is overprocessing details until emotional certainty becomes impossible. This transit helps cut through that. If work dynamics have felt strange, clarity may emerge. If communication has felt inconsistent, clarity may emerge. If your own standards have become confused by emotional fatigue, clarity may emerge. But Virgo, be careful. Discernment is your gift. Perfectionistic obsession is your trap. Not every delay is betrayal. Not every silence is hidden motive. Stay grounded in observable truth. And now Leo, because Leo may feel this transit differently, especially through relational mirrors. Leo, sometimes what is being revealed is not external deception. It is the truth about what certain relationships reflect back to you. Where have you overgiven for validation? Where have you confused emotional intensity with loyalty? Where have you stayed visible for people who never truly saw you? Mercury trine. Pluto may reveal uncomfortable but liberating relational truth, and that truth can restore self-respect faster than reassurance ever could. Now, let us step back, because this cosmic moment is bigger than individual signs. This is a collective psychological threshold, a moment where truth becomes harder to avoid, a moment where mental noise either sharpens into clarity or collapses into obsession, a moment where communication becomes karmically significant, because words matter under Mercury. Truth matters under Pluto, and intention matters under both. Some of you will receive external confirmation. Some of you will receive internal knowing. Some of you will finally understand a pattern that has repeated for years. Some of you will realize the answer already. It's existed inside your body long before your mind allowed it. That realization can feel emotional. Unexpected tears, strange calm, a sudden drop in anxiety, or the opposite. Temporary emotional turbulence as illusion breaks. All of it is information. What matters is how you respond. This is not the day to impulsively destroy relationships because of assumptions. This is not the day to chase emotional closure from unavailable people. This is not the day to send paragraphs fueled by midnight adrenaline. This is not the day to become spiritually dramatic. Because you saw repeating numbers twice, this is the day to become radically observant. Emotionally honest, psychologically mature, grounded enough to distinguish intuition from fear, wise enough to pause before acting, strong enough to hear truth without weaponizing it, because the hidden truth that's being revealed may not be what you expected. Sometimes the truth is not that someone betrayed you. Sometimes the truth is that they already showed you who they were, and you are not ready to believe it. Sometimes the truth is not that fate blocked your abundance. Sometimes the truth is that fear kept you negotiating against your own future. Sometimes the truth is not mystical. It is practical. A contract clause, a missed opportunity, a conversation avoided too long, a boundary never enforced. Its pattern repeated until awareness arrived. And yes, for some, there will be undeniably spiritual texture around this transit. Dream symbolism, unshakable gut knowing, a memory surfacing with strange precision, a sentence echoing repeatedly, a symbolic coincidence that feels it's impossible to ignore. Receive those moments with humility, but do not abandon grounded thinking. The universe does not need you irrational to communicate with you. Real intuition becomes clearer. The nervous system is calm. That is why your body matters so much right now. Rest, hydrate, reduce. OVERSTIMULA. Take breaks from compulsive scrolling. Notice your breath. Protect your sleep. Because clarity requires internal space. A cluttered mind mistakes noise for revelation. And now, one final truth. Mercury trine Pluto is not about fear. It is about awareness. Mercury gives language. Pluto gives depth. Mercury notices details. Pluto reveals meaning. Mercury asks questions. Pluto demands honesty together. They do something rare. They help you reclaim power through truth. Not performative power, not controlling power, not reactive. Power, real power. The kind that comes when confusion ends. The kind that comes when your mind and intuition stop fighting. The kind that comes when emotional self-deception loses its grip. The kind that comes when you stop begging ambiguity to become certainty. May 20th. It's not a punishment. It is a threshold. A locked archive opening. A sealed truth breathing for the first time. A hidden sentence finally becoming readable. And if something is being revealed now, trust this. It is not arriving to destroy your peace. It is arriving to restore it, because peace built on illusion is not peace. Peace built on truth is unshakable. So if the message comes, listen. If the realization lands, honor it. If the silence suddenly makes sense, believe what you understand. And if your soul has known for a long time what your mind is only now admitting, welcome to your awakening. The truth did not just appear, you were finally ready to hear it.